Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Simple Fund 360 Transfer Balance Cap Indexation. My name is Norman. I'm a product trainer here at BGL, and I'll be your host of today. Now, before we get into the content itself, do have to go through a few little housekeeping tips. Now, first thing is the webinar will be recorded. So if you ever want to watch this back again, or you've got some colleagues that have missed part or even the whole webinar, that's okay. We will be releasing the recording sometime next week. Now, everybody in attendance, you will get an email sometime next week once that recording has gone live, and that'll direct you to the actual recording of the webinar. So have a look out for that again sometime next week. Also, questions. I'm sure you might have some questions throughout today's session, and that's okay. If you have any questions, you'll see a little Q&A button in your Zoom panel. Go ahead and send your questions through to us. We're happy to take any and all your questions as we go along. Now, I'm also joined by a number of my colleagues here at BGL. We've got some of the guys from the training team, but we've also got some of the BGL managers here watching, and also some of the guys from the Simple Fund 360 product team. So a lot of knowledge at your fingertips. So send those questions through. They're going to actually help me out with monitoring and also answering some of the questions that come through. So, you know, you're getting a lot of really good information direct from the source through the Q&A. So definitely send that through. We've got a question on the notes for today's session. There aren't any notes, it's just the slides, and it's more of a presentation today. So pretty much sit back and just enjoy the show, really. So what are we covering today? Today we're going to cover, as I mentioned, T-bar indexation. So we're going to talk about the new change to the transfer balance cap and how that's going to actually work out in practice. But not only that, we're also going to talk about how that is going to look within the Simple Fund 360 product itself. So we're going to look at the dashboards and the different screens that you normally use, and how it's going to differ from previous financial years based on this change. And then finally, we're also going to talk really quickly on some of the contribution changes that have actually come about as a result of this T-bar indexation. Now, for those that might not be fully aware about transfer balance accounts and T-bar itself, we'll just go through, I guess, a quick explanation of the transfer balance cap. So from the 1st of July 2017, they introduced a cap on how much an individual can actually put into their retirement phase. And they capped that at $1.6 million. Now, along with that cap, they also introduced a new reporting standard. So whenever somebody put an amount into pension or retirement phase, they had to create a report and lodge that to ASIC. And that report will just outline exactly how much was put into pension. Now, those reports are what we know as transfer balance account reports, or T-bar for short. Now, we always knew that the cap was going to increase at some point in time, but we never knew how much and how exactly they were going about increasing the cap, but now we know. So what is the change? So from the 1st of July 2021, the cap, that $1.6 million cap, is going to be increased from $1.6 million to $1.7 million. However, they haven't made it that straightforward. They haven't made that straightforward. The amount that each person is going to have, or what each person's cap is going to be, is actually going to vary between 1.6 and 1.7. Okay, so everyone's amount is going to fall within, some point within those two amounts. Now, that amount is going to vary based on that person's pension between 2017 to 2021. Now, good news for everybody in attendance. I'm sure everybody here is using Simple Fund 360. And for those funds that are in Simple Fund 360, we've actually created the program to be able to calculate each person's cap for you. Now, that being said, it's still good to know or understand how the amount is going to be calculated and also how that applies in practice. So let's go through a few scenarios of what your trustees might be in, or some individuals, and how that's going to look for their personal cap. So our first example is going to be the person that has never had a pension before. So if you've never had a pension before, or a pension balance between 1 July 2017, which is when all this, I guess, T-bar nonsense came about, to 2021, good news, your cap is going to be at 1.7 million. So you're going to get the full benefit of that cap. Now, if you're, on the other hand, at any point in time between 2017 and 2021, have used up the full cap, 1.6 million, or even exceeded it, bad news is that your cap is going to remain at 1.6. Now, I just want to clarify this as well. It doesn't matter if the person started off with 1.6 and then eventually, commuted a balance out of it to get under the 1.6. Bad luck. If at any point in time between 1 July 2017 and 30th of June 2021, if it's 1.6 or more for that person, their cap is going to stay at 1.6 million. How about everybody in between? So what if you had an existing pension amount, but it wasn't quite the 1.6 million? Okay, so if you haven't used up the cap, your transfer balance cap is going to be indexed based on the highest balance of your account. Okay, so what you're looking at is the most amount that you've had in pension for that member, and that's the amount that's going to be used to find out how much of the cap that you're going to be able to utilize. Now, we'll simplify it later on, but we'll first go through some of the instructions that have been given to us from the ATO as to how to work out how much a person has in the cap. Okay, so these are the instructions directly from the ATO. And these are the instructions they've given to us as to how to calculate how much a person has. Now, I will start with everybody will have at least 1.6 million as their transfer balance cap. But it's a question of how much of the extra 100,000 is each person going to get. Now, from that extra 100,000, everyone is going to be assigned a percentage. Okay, that percentage obviously will vary from 0 to 100%. Now, once each person has that percentage, they just multiply it by that 100,000. And that's the amount that they get on top of their $1.6 million cap. And these instructions calculate or are used to work out how much that each person is going to have as far as that percentage goes. So step one, divide the highest ever balance of your transfer balance account by your transfer balance cap on the first day you had that balance. So say balance as many times as you can. Again, we're going to simplify this into an equation, but again, just showing you the instructions they've sent to us. Step two is express that as a percentage, rounded down to the nearest whole number. And then finally, subtract the result from 100. Okay, now let's simplify this. Let's simplify this into an actual equation that you can use. And for those that like math, you'll be a lot happier with looking at this. So this is an actual equation that you can actually utilize. So you've got 100% minus, and then in brackets, you've got the highest ever balance divided by 1.6 million. Okay, so if you know your maths, you've got to work out the sum of this, highest ever balance divided by 1.6 first, and then that amount you take away from 100%. So first thing you're going to do, if you're working out this out manually, is you've got to work out the highest ever balance. So this is the highest ever balance that somebody's had in pension for a member between 2017 and 2021. Okay, now here I've got a table of some of the events that might happen for, your average pension member. So they might start a pension, they might add more amounts to their pension, they might commute amounts out of their pension account. And, again, there's some of the fluctuations that you might see in a pension balance. Now, question for you, and I'll pull up a poll and we'll get everybody to try to answer it themselves, is you're looking for the highest ever balance. Now, looking at this poll here, what do you think, or what would you determine is the highest balance for this pension member? Okay, so I'll give you a moment to send in your answers, and we're getting a lot of really good ones. Okay, so I'll give it another 5 more seconds before I close it off. Okay, and I'll close it off now. And we'll share the results there. So what we can see there, so hopefully you can see that. Most of you, nearly all of you, did answer 1.2 million. So the highest ever balance is not the amount that they start off with as of 2017. It's not the amount that they end off with as of 2021, but it's the highest balance within those 2 periods, within that period. So you're looking at that 1.2 million. Okay, so how do we apply this to this certain equation? Okay, so as we determined, the highest balance for that example is 1.2 million. So good work for everybody for figuring that out. Now, if we apply that to the actual equation, so you've got the 100 minus 1.2 to 1.6. Now, when you're working this out, very important, because they put this in the instructions, is that this amount, the 1.2 divided by 1.6 amount, has to be expressed as a percentage, and it has to be rounded down to the nearest whole number. Okay, so you're not always going to get a whole number when you're working this out. So you might get, a lot of decimal points in it. But just remember, at that point, you then round it down to the nearest whole number. So in this case, it does give us a perfect 75%. So we take that 75% from 100%, and that gives us 25%. So we then apply that 25% to the 100,000. So we go 25% times 100,000. Again, that's the 100,000 extra that each person could potentially get. And that gives this individual an extra $25,000. So from the 1st of July, 2021, this person's transfer balance cap will be $1,625,000. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. That's the formula, and that's the formula that we'll use within the software itself. Okay, now another test. So hopefully everyone kind of understands it, and hopefully the message come across, is this example here, and I'll launch it shortly. Is the question is, an individual's unused cap percentage is calculated at 76%. Okay, so we've already done the, found out the highest balance, we've divided by 1.6 million and taken that away from 100%, and we got 76%. Based on this percentage, what is this person's transfer balance cap as of 1st of July, 2021? Okay, so sorry about this. I'll get the poll back. And there we should have it now. So I've launched it there. So you've got a chance to pick out the answer. And I guess in the meantime, you might have already figured out what it is already. So hopefully what you've calculated is going to appear there. Okay, so I'll give that another 10 more seconds. But the answers are looking really good so far. Okay, so we'll end it there. And I'm going to share the results of them. Okay, now what I can see there, excellent. Most of you have actually, or a vast majority of you have answered 1.676 million as your answer. So that's the correct answer. 1.676 million is going to be the transfer balance cap for this person. So remember, when you take that percentage, you're not applying it to the full 1.7 million, but you're applying it just to the extra 100,000. Okay. So how is this going to look in Simple Fund 360? So in Simple Fund 360, once you start processing the 2022 financial year, you're going to see a new line item in your transfer balance dashboard. Now, this line item is going to be generated as soon as you close the period of the 2021 year and roll over to the 2022 financial year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip over to Simple Fund 360. So hopefully you're all now familiar with Simple Fund 360. And you're going to find the transfer balance dashboard from the left-hand menu under Member and Transfer Balance Dashboard. Now here you've got the Transfer Balance Dashboard. Now if you scroll down, you will be able to see this line item just here with the new cap amount. So here we can see the new cap limit for this individual. Now, if you look at the actual narration under transaction type, you can see you've got a percentage and you've also got this formula here. So we'll actually indicate that the formula is being utilized by the actual software. Now, again, what's cool about Simple Fund 360 is that it will go through all the T-bar events for this individual, as long as they're recorded in the software itself, find out what the highest ever balance for this member is, and then apply the actual formula to that member to work out the new cap for that person. So here, it's being able to determine that it's 150,000 is the highest ever balance for this person. So it takes that and divides it by 1.6 million. Now, just to show you that the program has got its rounding on points, is I'm going to flip over to a calculator. Okay, so I'll flip over to a calculator. If I take 150,000 and I divide it by 1.6 million, it gives me 9.375%. But remember, you've got to round the percentage down to the whole percentage number. So that gives us a 9%. Okay, so you take that 9% from 100%, and that gives you a 91%. Now, if we go back into the software itself, you can see there you've got the 91%. Okay, so again, the program will apply that rounding correctly when it calculates the new cap amount. Okay, so you get the 91%, you apply it to that extra 100,000, and you get the 1.691 million as the new cap for this person. Okay. Now, if you ever want to check the highest balance for a person, again, as I mentioned before, the balance is going to be based on all the T-bar events that appear in the screen. Now, if you look at the top of the screen, you can actually see a drop down for the financial year. So you can actually flip between the different financial years to look at all the previous events that have been recorded in Simple Fund 360 for this person. Having said that, I wouldn't say that's probably the most practical way of just determining whether that highest balance is right. So what I want to introduce you to is a report that you can use that works a lot better for this case. Now, you'll find this in the report screen. From the left-hand menu, head over to Reports, and we'll select Reports. Now, in the report screen, the report that we're looking for is the Transfer Balance Account Summary Report. and you'll find that under work papers. So we'll add that there. Now, the purpose of this report is it lists out all the T-bar events that appear normally in the transfer balance dashboard into a PDF report. But the added benefit is that you can actually expand the reporting period within the report screen. So if you want to look at all the events across from 2017 to 2021, which is the period that you need to look at, you can change the dates here. So we'll change that to 2017 up until 2022. And then we'll click on preview reports, and that'll generate the summary. And there we can see all John's T-bar events that appear there. And then we can look at the balance to determine what is the highest balance for that person. Okay, so a really handy report. So if you ever look at how the program has calculated and you kind of question how the program got the highest ever balance, I'd say straight away, generate this report and just have a look at all these events. Now, I'll also add to this a bit more information with the highest ever balance is that there are actual event types that are going to be excluded when calculating the highest ever balance. So these are the ones listed that are actually excluded and indicated to us that they will be excluded. And we've actually added this to the software itself. So the first two are the main ones you have to look out for. So the T-bar events that relate to reversionary pensions, they're actually excluded when calculating the highest ever balance. Okay, so any of those recorded from 1st of July 2020 onwards, they won't be included when calculating the highest ever balance. So if you ever see that in the software, just know that the program will take that into account when calculating highest ever balance. Also, I've got 3 other event types that are listed there. Now, they, I should say, wouldn't be too much of an issue because they're actually not reportable events. So you won't come into them, I'd say probably 99% of the time, but I thought I listed there anyway, just in case. And they're in relation to accumulation phase value, retirement phase value, and notional tax contributions. But those events won't be included when calculating the highest ever balance. Now, if you do have these events recorded in your T-bar screen, that's okay. They'll still show up in your transfer balance account summary report, but the program is smart enough to determine that they don't include when calculating the new cap for the person. Okay. Now, if you don't remember what these event types are and which ones are included or aren't included, that's okay. You can always log a support call with our support team. Our support team members are across what's been included and what's not been included and how to calculate the actual cap. So they'll be able to help you out and just clarify what's going on with your funds. Okay. Updating the cap or updating T-bar events, you can update it yourself. So if you feel like you need to change it, maybe you need to adjust some entries from the transfer balance account dashboard screen, you can do that. We do allow you to do that within the software. So I'll flip over to Simple Fund 360, and I'm going to head back into the transfer balance dashboard. So from the left-hand menu, we'll go over to Member and select Transfer Balance Dashboard. Now, in the Transfer Balance Dashboard, you can see there you've got the new cap, as I showed you before. But for this cap, you can actually click on the Edit button, so the pen icon, and that allows you to actually change the cap yourself. So if you're not happy with how the program has calculated, for whatever reason, you can change it yourself. Okay, so we do allow you to do that as so. Now, if you do change it yourself, that's okay. What you'll see here is under transaction type, you can see the formula has disappeared, and that'll indicate that someone has manually adjusted the cap. Now, with that edit button, it does apply to other event types. So if you do want to change any of these event types, sorry, we'll go to a different one, different year. We want to change these amounts. you can do so from here if you do want to. So you can change this to, 160,000 if you want to, or whatever amount that you want to edit to. Now, for those that have keen eyes, you might also have noticed that there is a new button in the transfer balance dashboard. And the new button is the Calculate Personal TBC button. Now, this Calculate Personal TBC button actually has a few functions based on the fund that you do have. So back in the program, we've got the Calculate Personal TBC button here. So as I showed you before, I've gone ahead and edited the cap amount myself. So I've manually edited. First function that this Calculate Personal TBC button has is that it will refresh the calculation. So if I've manually changed it, if I click on the Calculate Personal TBC button again, it will actually refresh the screen and recalculate the cap for you. Okay, so if you're worried that somebody's accidentally putting the wrong amount and you want to reset it, you don't have to reverse entries or do any of that stuff. All you have to do is click on Calculate Personal TBC. The program will update it for you. Also, it works as again, recalculating the amounts if you change any of the previous T-bar events. So for example, if I manually go to a previous financial year, and let's say I change these amounts. So let's say I'm going to change this pension start amount. So normally you wouldn't do this, but let's say for argument's sake, I'm going to do it for you. So you can see how it works. So I've changed this amount to 160,000 from 150,000. Now, if I go to the current year, I can see it hasn't automatically updated. So it won't automatically update. It usually creates it when you close periods. But if I click on Calculate Personal TBC, it will then recalc the cap based on those changes that you make to those T-bar events. And you can see that the cap has updated. So now you have a 90% as the percentage for this individual, and the cap limit has updated there. So again, it works as a refresh and also a recalc feature with that personal TBC button. The other way it works is for new funds. So as I mentioned before, this entry here in the screen will be calculated once you close period for a fund. However, you might not be closing period for every fund that you have in Simple Fund 360. And I'll more point to funds that you've just done opening balances to. So normally when you do opening balances, you don't run create entries or the close period function. So I'm going to pull up a fund where I have done opening balances. And for this particular fund, you won't have that entry, but all you'd have to do is click on the Calculate Personal TBC button, and it will actually generate this line item for you. So from here, then you can go ahead and add the cap that you think applies for this person. Okay, so by all means, you can do that. Okay. Now, finally, I'll finish off with some of the non-concessional contribution cap changes. Now, this is going to be quick. So after this indexation change from the 1st of July 2021 onwards, individuals with a total super balance of 1.7 or more are going to have a non-concessional cap of 0, okay, starting from the 2022 year onwards. And also those with a $1.7 million total superannuation balance or total super balance, 1.7 or more, aren't going to be eligible for that carried forward or bring forward arrangements. So you can't bring forward the contribution cap over 3 years for those people. Now, these changes are going to be reflected or are currently reflected in our contribution dashboard and contribution reports. So you'll see the new caps appearing there from the 2022 year onwards. So keep in mind, keep in mind that the program is on top of these tax changes and requirement changes. Okay, so that takes us to the end of the session. So hopefully that was informative. Hopefully it gave you a bit more insight on these indexation changes and how that actually applies. Now, I know that math isn't necessarily everyone's cup of tea, but if anything that you take out of today's session is that Simple Fund 360 is awesome because it pretty much does everything for you. Now, that being said, we're going to leave the next few minutes for questions. So if you have any questions about today's session or about anything Simple Fund 360 related, send that in the Q&A section and we're happy to take it for the next 5 or so minutes. If you are going to leave us today, I'd like to thank you for your time that you've spent with us. Again, hopefully that you have taken something out of it, and hopefully you do stay safe and have a very lovely weekend. But again, we'll leave the next few minutes for questions.